Hello, good evening, good afternoon, good morning, maybe, from here in Brooklyn, New York. I am Chris Bear. I am a parent OCD advocate as well as the parent of a child with OCD. And welcome to Supporting Families, Navigating the Holidays with Hope. We are here to help answer questions as well as just have a general conversation about OCD, especially during the holidays. So, and handling that as a parent as well as with your family and extended family. So we'll get to all the questions and your questions and our guests in a minute, but I just wanted to let everybody know that this live stream is educational and is not intended to replace therapy. So for treatment-related questions, please work with your provider and contact your local therapist or clinician. You can use the International OCD Foundation's online resource directory at iocdf.org/find-help. And you can locate a trained clinician near you or somebody who might be offering teletherapy near you. The International OCD Foundation, as well as this live stream, is not a crisis hotline. So if you are in crisis and you are ever feeling suicidal or unsafe, please go to your local emergency room or call 911 if you're in the US. And you could also dial 988, which is the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. By dialing 988, or I think you can also go to www.988lifeline.org. We want to create a safe space to be kind, so please be kind and respectful to everybody that is going to be asking questions as well as making chats in the comments. And at the end of the day, we're all here to support one another. So a note that this is being recorded and broadcast on several social media platforms. So just keep that in mind as we go through the next hour. And also just one plug, we want to hear from you, our audience, about what you're feeling these days. You can take the survey for parents and caregivers of people with OCD. Might be a QR code that pops up in a second, but it's also the survey is also on our website at iocdf.org/parents-caregivers-survey. That's iocdf.org/parents-caregivers-survey. And you can provide valuable feedback that's going to help us moving forward, as well as inform some of the next talks we might have in the new year. And also definitely have to give a shout out to Jack MHA for their dedications and support, which is why we're here. It makes this live stream event and the Supporting Parents event and Supporting Families event happen tonight. So thank you, Jack. And with that, I definitely want to introduce our guests and get right to some questions. Like I said before, my name is Chris Bear. I was producer of the film Unstuck. I'm a parent of a teenager with OCD, as well as on the Parent OCD Advocate or OCD Advocates Committee on the IOCDF. And Kim, I'd love you to introduce yourself and go next.
Hi, I'm Kim Vincenty. I'm formerly president of OCD Jacksonville, so I got to wear an affiliate hat for a number of years. And then I started Jack Mental Health 2 years ago, just about, and it's been such a great blessing. I just wanted to advocacy from wherever I find myself in the world. And I'm the mother of an OCD sufferer, and I love this community, and I see more and more and more the need for families to have psychoeducation about how to deal with this complex disorder in the home. So that's why we're doing this, and I thank you so much for being here and for everybody's support.
Thanks, Kim. Welcome again. Darlene, we'll have you chat about yourself and introduce yourself to everyone right now. Thanks.
You're on
mute.
Sorry, I do that for safety. I spend a lot of time online, so do that for safety. Hi, reintroduce myself. I am Darlene Davis Goodwine. I am here as a parent advocate, but I am also a provider. If you've ever joined us at the Diversity Roundtable through IOCDF, you've seen me as a facilitator. I've been around the IOCDF community since it graduated. So participating in research with Black Americans in OCD, participated on panels. And so I'm grateful to be in this space. I advocate heavily for parent support generally. So I am a parent. I have 2 boys. And the role of a parent and caregiver is challenging enough. And so when I advocate for parents of those who are providing supports for youth and adults navigating behavioral health dynamics, I like to center that voice and advocate for support. So that's what I hope to provide today, just kind of the validation of the challenges that parents face, both in the clinical and therapeutic space, as well as in the community space where we're looking to access resources, make it available, and get the support to even navigate behavioral health. So you got any questions about that? Bring them forward.
Fantastic. And we'll go with our last guest night, Shirley.
Okay, hi, I'm Shirley. I'm from Valencia, California, and I am an OCD sufferer myself, and then also the parent of a child with OCD. I share my story often on social media. My son was the Youth Hero Award winner. He shares his story as well. And I also help organize and facilitate an OCD awareness group here in Santa Clarita for parents and just for other individuals with OCD.
Awesome. Well, thank you and welcome, Darlene and Shirley and Kim. Glad to have you here, and happy holidays to everyone. And I'll give you an early Happy New Year. Wow, the years always fly by. If you are tuning in, we'd love to hear where you're coming from. I saw somebody had a comment that the Ohio. I see Australia. Welcome, and I guess it's good morning, good day in Australia. Also, some folks in California. Hello, Michelle. And so it's good to have you with us. And if you're watching the replay, we hope you find what we're going to talk about in the next hour valuable and helpful for you, no matter what time of year you're hearing it. So let's get to the first question. The holiday time, it's busy. It tends to be extra stressful. There's the kind of pressure of the end of the year, getting to different gatherings. So with all the things on your to-do list this month, do you find yourself accommodating OCD behaviors more? And have you done anything different to kind of catch yourself and make sure that you're doing accommodations and making sure you're not accommodating OCD in your loved one as often? Shirley, do you want to give us your POV on that?
Yeah, the first answer is yes, we find ourselves doing more accommodation, and it's not often intentional. We just catch ourselves doing it, like, oh, we really are giving in to OCD a lot, because the reality is that it simplifies things. It does. But then the thing we have to remember is that it only simplifies them temporarily. And that's where we have to dig in and decide we're not going to accommodate this, because there's this, it's like the quick fix thing. You fix your car quickly, cheap fix, and then later it's causing a bigger problem. You have to deal with a bigger issue later. So we do catch ourselves accommodating, and we just have to, my husband and I especially are a team, and we remind each other, like, we have to stop this accommodation, because after Christmas, if we don't stop it, we're going to have a whole bigger problem on our hands.
Yeah, it's like you almost have to restart, so you got to keep that up.
Yeah, if we want to start over, then let's keep accommodating. If we want to keep our baseline, then we have to catch ourselves and stop ourselves.
Kim or Darlene? Yeah.
Yeah, no, go ahead, Kim.
No, go ahead.
Well, no. Floor is yours.
Well,
Visitor.
I mean, I'm a long way down the path of OCD, but when my son was a child, most certainly we accommodated OCD. One of the bigger challenges was informing family members or people that were going to be around for Christmas what was going on. Most certainly, 20 plus years ago, there wasn't the information or the live streams or, the things that are available in the mainstream media where people would have any level of understanding of OCD and what was going on. So I felt like I had to do this preparatory work for anybody coming into our sphere. And I think that was a bigger challenge even than accommodation to keep things on a even keel, was how much am I gonna talk about this ahead of time to those that may encounter it?
I think I what'd you say?
Oh, no, go ahead.
I was about to say, I'm glad I let you go first, because I was kind of thinking along those lines too, of kind of mapping out like what you might see and expect, and like what you can do about it. So when you offer the word prepare, right, as we know in the anxiety space, that's literally what our mind is always trying to do, to anticipate and kind of get in front of things. But when you're also thinking about the stress of moving a lot, I wanted to just offer like the validation of being a parent and that struggle, and just extending that grace to like the entire family because everybody is stressed, everybody is overwhelmed. And when you're navigating OCD, you know that the extra stress just like makes it even more challenging to manage and kind of stick with everything. So while that goes for, you know, your child, it goes for you as well. So I would just sprinkle in some grace, families, and say, you know, if you can, just try to simplify things, because and just like take the weight of having to do everything a certain way. And it's ironic, like when we're talking about OCD, like, but we get like this in the holidays. We got to show up here, and we got to have this, and we can't miss this, and we can't leave this. Like that's part of the stress of the holidays. So if you already know it's already been a rough couple months, and you're kind of going into the holidays, just assessing and preparing, like, okay, I know I got to do this, 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 and this. Find something you can like relieve yourself from, like giving yourself permission to say, you know what, we just ain't gonna make this one. We're just not. Whether it's going to somebody's house, whether it's remembering to pick up that present, whether it's trying to make sure, because you know as parents how we get, like I got to make sure they have these gifts, or I got to make sure we do this activity because this is Christmas. Like give yourself permission to not, capital N-O-T, just not do it for the sake of maintaining the progress you've made through your accommodations, because that stress, it affects you too and your ability to want to participate in accommodations. So like just give yourself permission and not, okay? That's my contribution.
Yeah, I mean, it's great advice, not just for the stressful holiday season, but the whole year. I guess, like, if, you know, you're things that you might be doing in January and June to make sure that you're taking care of yourself, you should still try to remember in December, even with that extra pressure of getting things around for the holidays. I just want to give a shout out to folks who, looks like we got folks from Canada, California's in the house, North Carolina. If you have any questions for the panel, could be related to navigating the holidays with OCD, or just in general about parenting or caregiving someone with OCD, feel free to use that comment, and you know, we're happy to try to answer as many questions as we can get to. You know, we were just kind of talking about self-care, and Darlene and Shirley brought up kind of meeting with other people and how you you know, that can add extra stress. So actually, one of the questions I wanted to get an answer from this panel was like any strategies for managing situations with extended family. You might be seeing family that you haven't in a while, that, like Kim was talking about. You might be, you know, how do you set up and handle situations? So any strategies for helping external family understand what's going on, but also, like, you know, make sure that you're prepared for anything that might happen during a party or family gathering, or, you know, celebration?
Well, for me, I wanted to find out what my child was comfortable with, first and foremost. How much is he willing to participate in what's going to go down? If it's a holiday party, if it's just a family gathering, you want to give them room to deal with their disorder. But of course, you don't want to accommodate them shutting the door and staying through the entire holiday season in their room. So, you know, it's basically, you know, starting with a question and answer session with the person that's struggling with OCD, and then finding out how they can best integrate, you know, being part of a normal family, because in the end, they're part of the family and everybody loves them. So, you know, reminding them that they don't have to turn up and be perfect. None of us turn up to Christmas being perfect. So, you know, just finding out how much or how little, you know, they're willing to participate, and then what can I do to make it easier? for them to have a good time, but not cutting things out because for the sake of the other family. I mean, they're part of a family. They're not the focus of the family. So, you know, I wanted to try to make sure that my daughter and her friends and my husband and his family, everybody was getting their holiday needs met as well, you know. So we tried not to accommodate OCD to the point where, you know, holiday festivities were squelched. However, I struggled with the problem of anticipatory anxiety, you know, that our argument where, you know, you're bleeding before you're already cut. You know, I was just waiting for the shoe to drop all the time. So I wasn't at my best. Most certainly, I needed as much therapy through the holidays as my child did. I needed to reset or do the self-care or recognize that I was stressing before there was even an incident, you know, or before OCD had jumped in and messed things up. I was already messing it up in my head, waiting for OCD to drop the bomb. And a lot of times it was unnecessary. You know, I stressed and I didn't need to.
I just saw a comment from someone named Felice Becker, and I just wanted you to know, Felice, even though you're a spouse and not a parent, I think if you want to stay, you should stay, because I think a lot of things that we're going to talk about will definitely be applicable to spouses and aunts and uncles and grandparents. So please stay if you're still here. Kim, I love what you said about anticipatory anxiety because we get the same thing. We're like, we're gonna go do this thing. Okay, we know because of trends in the past that stuff could go down and this could not end up being a great situation. And so we do try not to get too caught up in the what if he has OCD while we're at this thing. But also every year we try and sit down with him and say, these are the things that have happened in the past. We want you to participate. We want you to be happy. We want you to enjoy. So what can we do now to help you enjoy Christmas in 2 weeks? What exposures can we do now so that when something comes up, you've already been doing the exposures and you're ready for it? So we try and do prep work. Instead of letting it kind of come upon us, we try and get ahead of the OCD and say, okay, this is what bothers you at Christmas. What exposures can we do? What ERP can we do so that when it comes, it's not so hard for you and you can have a happy day? So that's one thing that we try and do.
Yeah, I remember one thing that we would, you know, I think, Kim, your point and about just kind of like talking through with them what's going to happen, who might be there, so it's not set up at least some understanding of what's going to happen at the holiday event or holiday dinner. We had when my daughter was younger, there was like a secret sign that she would give us if something was bothering her. I mean, clearly if something happened, we would know it, but you know, there might be, she would just do this. So we'd know, okay, maybe you just need a little bit of like space by yourself for a little while, or you need to calm down for a second, or you're just feeling overwhelmed. So little things like that were ways that we could kind of handle it within the family. And also, you know, make sure that we weren't obsessing over how she was doing while we were trying to have a good time during the party.
So important.
I think because you all are so comprehensive in your experience, I feel like I'm just like, oh, okay, yeah, I don't have anything to ask. But the one thing that did come to mind, because you, Chris, you said what I was thinking when you first asked the question. I think it's important to have an exit plan, right? Like not an avoidance plan, but an exit plan, right? Because that's honoring kind of the experience and supporting the family in participating in the holiday experience. With also being flexible and honoring that sometimes, you know, things happen and we can't control all of the pieces, and that conveys to the child that they're supported regardless. But the other thing I would add was kind of setting it up for yourself that you carry the energy that your family will respond to, if that makes any sense, right? So you may not be able to get a prep session in for your family to kind of give everybody put them on the same page. You might have some family members who will never understand. Some families don't even acknowledge mental health. So if you're going into that environment, part of the prep, either heading there or like before you start your morning, is like anchoring yourself in awareness. When I do therapy, I do a lot of work with people, not fixing anything or changing anything, but just noticing that moment switches. Where I started off, I was focused, I was ready, we were all on the same page, and then I left, meaning I went into whatever my process was, or my concern, or my anticipation, or my preparation. Like the moment I left our shared experience, then it's helpful for me to notice that, so that I can say, okay, I need a break. Let me take 5 seconds, whether it's listening to, taking a sip of my tea, whatever it is, to anchor yourself and bring yourself back. Like find that thing and have that thing for yourself, because oftentimes the family's watching you. So if you don't get to give them a heads up, then you have a phrase prepared to say, all right, this is what we're doing. Because while we all have different dynamics within our families, but at the end of the day, like your child, your family member needs to know that they have that safe barrier, like that support. And families are often responsive, and sometimes they don't know what to do. So oftentimes you're just kind of you're guiding them on like, hey, this is how we're experiencing this. This is what we're doing with this. So, hey, this is what's going on with John. This is what we're doing, guys. And then we're just going to keep moving. Like I said what I said, and then we're going to move on. And so having that as a resource as well. Because again, you may be walking into family dynamics that you don't have control over. So those are 2 things. I know I gave 2. So it's kind of like being aware when you kind of step out of the shared plan, and then having a phrase that you can anchor your family depending on what may happen with your loved one.
Yeah, and sometimes you need to provide them with information. My father was a medical researcher, so I always felt like I had to give him the data, from the source. But back 20 years ago or more, all I had there was a great article in Time magazine, and I would share that with everybody. And nowadays you can send them the books, or you can send them the articles about reassurance and accommodation, or what contamination OCD looks like, or what scrupulous behavior is, or whatever. And I think family members are grateful for that information. I mean, sometimes, they don't know what to do, but if you've given them, some information that they can ingest on their own time before they're thrown into a family situation, I think it's helpful.
I think family too can feel like they see a situation happening. Sometimes situations with OCD can seem intense and people don't know what's going on, and you're handling it well. You know what's going on. So I think also just like releasing the burden from them. You don't need to step in. We're okay. We're handling this, because they feel like, oh, this is out of control. Where maybe for you, you're like, wow, this is actually going pretty well. So.
Yes.
Perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, managing the there is that, like, I guess that's the other part of the pressure. I guess anytime you're going to an event where there, might be a lot of the people or a party, it's like the expectations of the host or the expectations of the, the other people there. What are they going to feel? So trying not to get too bogged down by how other people react, but at the same time, making sure to say like, hey, this is good. We got this, keeping that perspective is important. There was a question, it's kind of a question in the chat from DW about reassurances, accommodations, and sometimes the person with OCD might get angry, nasty, really when you don't accommodate or you don't provide reassurance, OCD gets very mad. We know it's temperamental. So, and that can be stressful for the caregiver, the family, anybody, and the spouse, anybody, and that's nearby. So, any ways that you've experienced anyone, and this question could be for anybody to take this, how somebody might react with anger when it comes to doing something that you're not supposed to do with OCD, like practice accommodations or provide reassurance.
One of the most helpful things that I was told, and that's it was when my son was a young man, I mean, just a teenager or teenager even, was, sometimes they're just going to be a brat, and you don't put up with a brat. You've got to parent your child with OCD the same way you would parent your other kids. You don't get to yell and scream at mommy. You don't get to cuss at mommy. You don't get to throw things. And I think that's pretty helpful. Of course, we have a huge amount of compassion and empathy when we know for sure, and you do learn that your kid is indeed suffering. And that's why this is coming out. However, that behavior just doesn't get a free pass. And so, I didn't have to deal with that very much, but I've met countless families that have. And, them setting appropriate boundaries around that behavior, even if it means discipline or sending them to their room or whatever, is really the best way to handle it. They don't get to disrupt everybody.
I think too, some of the most helpful things for us have been the conversations that are separate from the situation, like sitting down with him and saying, when this is happening, we're not going to do it. We're not giving you reassurance. This is why, because we love you, because it's going to help you, and reminding them later, like, what happened earlier wasn't okay. I know you were frustrated. Remember, this is why we're doing this. This is why we're not giving you reassurance. We do it separately when they're not in the moment, and then they can see, I understand that's why you were doing that then, just to bring that connection back.
Yep. There's internalizing expressions of anger and exercising expressions of anger, right? And so the ones that stay kind of closer to the person with the anger has less of an impact. The ones that go out a little further, right, just radiates a little bit further, those are the ones. And so DW, the idea is, as a parenting coach, like I sit in the space as I do as a therapist, like there's not any right or wrong answer. There really is. It's definitely going to be contextual and situational, based on like what capacity you have as the parent. I always start with what capacity do you have to deal with this, because I think that is important. We have conceptualized and thought through, and we kind of got a good sense of what's going on with your child. But you, where are you? And from that space is where I often encourage parents to think about, like, the person navigating the ERP, they have their protocol, right? Like, it's well developed, it's established, we got techniques, A, B, and C. Parents, not so much. And that's the reason why I sit in this space as a provider, because I'm like, we got to develop like the same way we give a framework and a system for the individual with OCD. This is a space where we really need to develop to give you all like consistent framing for how to navigate this, because this is ongoing. So I say in response to that, it's like, okay, whatever you've done, when there is like Kim was saying, like it's the overlap of parenting with supporting your individual with OCD. So whatever you pull in as your parent role, like whatever I do with anger, they have that foundation because it's already been instilled. So it's kind of pull into that. And then from the perspective of OCD, because someone said the word compassion, I can give you a compassionate out. Because one of the things we do as I encourage folks when their child is having very like explosive bets with anger and they're acting like tantrums and that kind of thing, it's like, okay, clearly that's a sign that we need soothing. Now, what that soothing looks like is, that, again, that depends on your capacity, that depends on the scenario. So that's what I would encourage a person to think about. Like, start with the capacity you have and then say, okay, I know the tools I've instilled in them because I've been raising them. And so I anchor the disciplinary response of like, okay, this is unacceptable, but then what can I offer for soothing? And keeping in mind that it may not work, right? So it might shift from we're in the middle of the spectrum where I could be more compassionate, give more choices, to all the way at the end, okay, you have no choice, this is where we're going and this is what we're doing, right? And so that's what I would offer as a strategy. There is no blanket stick. It's so many moving pieces and dynamics that have more to do with your capacity to sit or like host for that child, soothing, right? Like if you can host it for them, then you can pull them into your relaxation, whatever the case may be. But if you don't have it, don't bring them in close because then y'all gonna rub against each other and you're gonna explode. So I hope this is like a good understanding This is how I want you to think about it for real. So if that means, hey, you're clearly upset, a safe, and you're thinking of like, okay, where's the safe space I can put them? We're not gonna tear the room up, or they're not gonna do something else harmful. Like, you gotta factor those things in. But ultimately, the goal is either to bring them in if you can hold soothing for them, if you can't find them a safe space, and then offer them soothing. One of the things I used to do with my child was just like rub their hand. So of course this doesn't work if there's a sensory dynamic, and so this is why I say, right, you got to be careful. But find the thing, think of the thing that offers soothing for that individual, and then offer it to them. And then if they're not able to receive it, because that's what it means when you pass out or throw something, they can't receive it. So then offer them just a pause, a stop, and then introduce soothing when you're just assessing, like in the moment, like whether they're ready to receive it. That's what I think.
You bring up two. It's really hard to de-escalate a situation if one of you is angry or both of you are stressed and kind of butting heads. So I know one of the things our therapist tried to instill in us was, if something happens in the moment, it may not be the best time to parent or teach, or explain why this is bad. But later on, when you don't have that anxiety or everything's calmed down, or the next day you kind of say, okay, if you did something that you're not proud of, you can apologize, you can explain when things are de-escalated, and you can kind of have a more rational conversation on why you might have reacted away, or why something that somebody with OCD wasn't acceptable. Darlene, I'm curious, one of the things you said made me think of, like you're working with people with OCD, but how are you training, teaching, educating the loved ones in the family, the parents, spouses, even siblings, so that they can handle what's going on at home when they're not with you, or when they're not, in session?
So that is, again, why I have stepped into the parent advocacy world. I think there is a lot of growth for that space from a clinical training perspective of the therapeutic space. Now, I offer that because I found myself doing it even when it wasn't a part of the protocol, right? Because ideally, we're looking at environment. We're looking at, we know OCD is in the accommodation and all of those aspects about the environment. And family members are part of that environment. So it's a lot of education around grace. I push grace first. And what I mean by grace, and that is not spiritual or religious in any means, it's I have a third pillar in my therapeutic process. It's very much be kind to yourself. So I say, I'm to honor your emotions. This goes for my parents too. This goes for everybody. I have 3 pillars in therapy. Honor your emotions, which means don't avoid them, don't suppress them, speak to them, name them, feel them, because it's important to process them. They are information. Pillar number 2 is understand your process. So from a loved one's or a parent's perspective, you also have an automatic response. You do a thing in the same way they do a thing. And so you as parents or loved ones are dancing. Everybody has a dance. And then pillar number 3, be kind to yourself. You're going to make mistakes. Nobody's perfect. You're going to, as a parent, you're going to yell. You're going to accommodate. Like you're going to accommodate.
You're not perfect. Yeah.
Right.
Here's why this is the challenge in this space. It's because you're essentially, as a parent, and I know this because I have a child. I am asking you, and I say this to them, I am asking you to sit with and observe your child being uncomfortable and in distress. I know what I'm asking you to do. I know that it's hard. I get it. And so I want you to be kind to yourself when you feel just a nudge to go in there and step in and just to save me one time. I just can't stand to watch you this time. I get it. And this holiday time will be that time because as Shrista said, did I say right? Shrista?
Kirsty, it's okay.
As he said, it's like you and Kim said it too. You want the holiday experience with your family. You want that for your child. That is what we hold our family members' dreams and goals, and we want the best for them. And I see you suffering, and I can't fix it because we know as parents, we got to fix everything. And we planned your life for like the first 30 years, just so you know. Kids, if you are listening, we have planned your life. So because of that, like there's an entire shift that is with the parent that is not accounted for in our therapeutic process. There is guilt. There is grief. There is sadness. None of that is accounted for. So I'm doing a lot more of emotional support with loved ones to say, hey, this is hard. This is hard to watch. This is hard to sit on your hands. This is hard because you don't understand. So you're in the role of trying to get the information and get the language so that you can offer it, especially if it's a little person. Like, you're trying to teach them life while also trying to teach them how to navigate OCD. Like, oh my goodness. So yeah, that's where we are.
Absolutely.
One, there's a gap, and two, it's about honoring the parental experience of having to observe, which goes against one's natural parental like shift and like goals. So that's what I mean by that gap. Part of how I'm thinking about it is like, how do we support and give parents and caregivers and loved ones language for that? That too is a challenge. And we're not there yet. I know there's been discussions, but we're not there from like a framework perspective. So
Yeah, the education for the whole family is key, and they're the ones living with it. So giving them the space, the compassion, but also the tools to kind of handle it at home or wherever is super important. Welcome everyone. We're in the middle of a discussion. This is supporting families navigating OCD with hope through the holidays. We have Kim and Shirsti, and Darlene with us, and we're if you have any questions, feel free to throw a question in the chat. But we're I think the issues we're bringing up can be stressful in the holidays, but also are applicable throughout the entire year. So I'd like to just touch base on one of the topics that is always big in our house has always been is we know that OCD loves to dominate the family, dominate family relationships. How do we minimize the impact of obsessions and compulsions when they can affect siblings, extended family? How can we protect and manage OCD's effects on others that we love and care for? Maybe think about like how you might have done that in your life. So I can start off giving an example. We made sure from very early on that our younger daughter, who does not have OCD, still had special time and special space and could earn rewards the same way her sister did, but also OCD was not going to get in the way if her sister had a birthday party to go to, or we were going to a movie she wanted to see. So we tried to make a hard line that like we know what OCD wants to do, but there's going to be a separation as much as we can, that she is, your sister is not going to be as impacted by this. And we don't care how angry OCD gets at the fact that we're going to do this, but we're going to do this as a family, or you might just stay home for this. So that we made sure that there was somewhat of a separation so that the younger sibling could be not as impacted as she could have been.
And I think hit the nail on the head. That's what you absolutely have to do, or else, the whole family starts crumbling. Everybody. And for me, when I would, go out with my daughter or do something like that, then I carried a lot of guilt. I remember there was a season when my son was 10 or 11 and things were really bad. I felt like I was his only friend. I viewed myself that way because he was struggling so much. And if I would take a date with my husband, or we had season tickets for football then, and my husband, it was always like, we have to tailgate and go to the game. And it seemed like this long day away from my child that needed me. And I really felt guilty all the time. I remember crying in the car on the way to the football game. And I realized, wow, this is really affecting all of us, but my marriage has to stay intact. We still have to have fun. And so it was, trial and error for a while. It was like the school of hard knocks, getting to that place where I was able to be who I needed to be, and I could be available to the rest of my family the way I needed to be.
I related to what you said, Chris. When we first started with my son, he was like earning tickets and earning rewards and doing all these things. And I remember when one of his brothers was like, well, when can I earn something? And I was like, that's a good point. He has 3 other siblings who were not focusing so much on their health, and it really hit us when his younger brother had something happen mental health wise, that we realized, wow, we really haven't been making sure everyone else is as well as the one who is in treatment. And so we've had to kind of step back and say, are we giving them all what they need? Not just the one who very clearly needs us, but the ones who seem fine, are they really okay? So we've had to do that. Another thing that we've done is from day one, we've tried to educate the other kids. Like my 6-year-old could tell you the definition of OCD. He knows what it is. He knows what uncertainty is. He knows what ERP is. And we have everyone do exposures. We all have fears in our family. So my 6-year-old has done knife exposures, even though he doesn't have OCD, or we do exposures together. We bring humor into it. One time at dinner, we all wore devil horns that like flashed, and everyone thought that was great. We make sometimes, not always, but sometimes we make it a family affair because it brings us together. It gives our other kids a chance to have empathy, and it makes it seem like it's not just for one kid, but it's everybody's learning about mental health. Everybody's improving their mental health together. And so it is a family affair. So we try and make it as fun and happy and stuff like that as we can.
And I think the only thing that I could add was like being able to take a vacation, like from all of it, from the mental health, from the specific conversations and the education and that just like taking call it a vacation or a holiday or whatever you want to call it. It just says we are not talking about any of that stuff because it's so much a part of our everyday. So just like taking a family vacation. And then, family wise, and then to Kim's point, right? Like parents, caregivers, other loved ones independently, taking a vacation. I think Kim is a perfect example of how you don't realize you have like mental connections to their care, even with them.
Yeah.
It's kind of like if you remember like your first separation from them when they were infants, or you like first let them spend a night over at somebody's house or something like that. It's kind of like that. Like it's, you want to develop that kind of idea too and well before they end up going to college or something like that, right? You want to kind of start prepping yourself for that. Like, how do I take like a cognitive like separation vacation from caring for them, monitoring whether or not they are, monitoring whether or not I'm doing accommodations, monitoring whether or not they're in episodes or anything like that. Like really being intentional about
and I think parents do observe things, particularly during the holidays. I know from running family support groups for years, parents, and I have great empathy for the parents of kids with co-occurring disorders, substance use disorders, eating disorders, ASD, because the holidays escalate those things. There is alcohol around during the holidays. And if your loved one is self-medicating their OCD with alcohol, it's ripe for an explosion there. Co-occurring eating disorders, something like 40% with people with OCD. And the holidays are nothing but food. And that's triggering. It's triggering. And, ASD, noise and new faces and, all that kind of stuff is very, very problematic. And so I remember sitting in a support group and the parents are saying, I noticed this and noticed that. And so if you notice those things as in your inner place as a parent or as somebody that loves this person with OCD, address it with their therapist or ask the appropriate questions, because those co-occurring things are very common and you want to address them appropriately.
So we're making sure that we're present. We're being involving if kids want to, making sure that there's space to do what you have planned to do or the sibling has to do, and always empathy and care. There's a question in the chat that I think would be great for us to talk about. How do we tell other family members about our loved one's OCD Do we even tell them at all? Do we just pretend everything's fine? How have you handled that in your own lives? We all kind of had that experience, and what were some ways that maybe a way that it worked, or what you would suggest? Like telling somebody else, how do you introduce OCD to a family member?
Well, first, I think you have to ask your loved one with OCD how much they're willing to allow you to disclose. I think it's there, depending on the age of the person. I think they deserve to be asked if you can share. But I think, that it's helpful to have family members and other extended family to understand this disorder. And like I said, I sent this Time magazine order. It was called When Worry Hijacks the Brain. And it was the first article I ever found that kind of explained it. And I would send it to everybody ahead of time. And then, add, there are these, spectrums of OCD or different subtypes. And this is how it can look there. And let them ask you the questions, but provide the basic information of what you're dealing with. If it's okay with your loved one for you to disclose, I think families are grateful to know.
I agree with that.
I think is helpful. Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, seeking permission is good, is great advice to make sure they're comfortable with what you're going to share.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say too. Before any of these types of things, I always sit down with my son and I'm like, is it okay if I share this, tell this? Just because that's important. And then sometimes it's circumstantial. Like there are people who still don't know about my son's OCD, family members, because we don't see them often, or maybe the scenario we're going to be in, it's probably not going to come up. And then there are other times where we have the anticipatory thing. We know that something might happen, so we just want to let them know this is what's going on. So it's kind of evolving over time. People find out over time, and some people we haven't told because they just don't. It's like a need to know basis right now for us, I think.
And now the IOCDF has just so many resources. Just tell them to get on the IOCDF webpage and families and caregivers. And there are just fact sheets, one after the other, that are so helpful. We have this incredible resource at our fingertips now that 20 years ago we really didn't have. I mean, the IOCDF was there, but I mean, it's a game changer now. It's the go-to source.
I always tell people to watch the video. Who was it? He tells you to tell your family member to write, I hope so-and-so dies a horrible death. I always tell them to watch that video because it helps them understand it. Oh, Jonathan Grayson.
You got a kid. I always tell everybody, if you got a kid, watch Unstuck.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Yeah, certainly having it. I think, Kim, to your point, you have lots of resources out there. John Hirschfield's, who was our guest last month, when a family member has OCD, is just a fantastic primer and educational tool for any extended family.
And
my
John
daughter
has the Family Guide to Getting Over OCD, which is also excellent and comprehensive. There's great books out there now.
Yeah, if you have a younger child, you might say, hey, what's your favorite book that explains OCD? There's so many now. My daughter took her Blink, Blink, Clop, Clop book and, would read it to her sibling, read it to other family. This is to explain what I had. And that kind of opens the conversation.
Absolutely.
Another question we have in the chat, Darlene, I think this would be great for you to take. It's really around OCD and hoarding. Somebody who might not really feel like they have the tools to be able to help somebody who it sounds like their father might have hoarding disorder. So ways that you might be able to learn yourself about hoarding and how you could potentially begin to help them out.
So yes, let's just say, so I am so sorry that you're experiencing this. It seems like there's a nature of a medical condition as well. So that's a lot on top of kind of navigating, supporting. I'm trying not to read too much into it, but here's where I start. Like traditional OCD, because again, at some point, hoarding was under the same umbrella, but we've learned that there are some differences there. But the beautiful thing about IOCDF is that there's still a wealth of information available about hoarding through the IOCDF website. I will kind of fan out and just be more general about this response as relates to what can you do when your loved one is not doesn't have the most insight or have the awareness that there's a problem, even though there are impacts and interference and disruptions are showing up in their life. And so it really is a tough place to be in. I would encourage you to seek out like support groups. That would be my first thing. Because one of the things that offers you is a space to kind of connect with others who are sharing experience. You could get a lot of good feedback and ideas about how to navigate those different experiences, especially if it at some point starts to overlap with actual functioning, right? Like, again, there's a medical condition there. Sometimes with hoarding, you see financial constraints and those dynamics. So that would be my initial response. Is like, seek out support, seek out your people. It's like, go sure do it. Like, find somebody who can relate and speak to that, because that's a really, really tough position to be in. It is the biggest gap, like, of helplessness, right? Just like, I just don't know what to do. And again, the best place to start is to find your people. So yeah, that would be my first recommendation.
Yeah, support groups are super helpful. We know from my own personal experience, it's been great to talk to somebody who might be going through something else or had gone through it before you and can give you their advice. So you kind of like learn through by example and learn maybe some things that didn't work and did work. Also just great to find your community because they understand what you're going through, maybe even more than like a friend or a relative who might not be going through the same thing.
I will also add that I noticed I did not say seek out a provider. And that is from experience. And I'm going to tell you why. It's not, listen, I'm a provider. I get it. I would say, yes, they need to be in therapy. I think you should work with them and that kind of thing. But here's the about specifically hoarding. That is a very challenging disorder to treat. And it requires a level of participation that we can't make people as providers participate. So I would not want you to exert that level of energy trying to like win and problem solve the situation if that individual is not on board. So that I just wanted to clarify. That's why I sent you the route of support, because that anchors you, especially in navigating just that feeling of helplessness and kind of feeling like you don't know what to do or you're on your own. So we want to fill that void first, and that's kind of the best place to start.
And Renee, thank you for the question. Darlene, really appreciate all the context and, the rationale behind, finding support group or even, how difficult hoarding is to treat. So hope that was helpful, Renee. Kim touched on this earlier. How does a significant other loved one address the co-occurring problems with that might really spike during the holidays? Things, seasonal affective disorder, depression during the holidays, all the overuse, maybe the prevalence of alcohol or food during these. So, how can we? What are ways that the loved ones can kind of help and understand what the person going through this, the comorbid issues might be dealing with?
I think seek out the resources that speak educationally to those disorders and what you have to do. I mean, you always put out the fire at hand first. So what's causing the greatest disruption? If the fact that your person with OCD is stone cold drunk, in the room, you got to maybe mitigate that problem first. But really, when you know that the underlying is they're miserable from their OCD, and make sure that, when they're don't fight a drunk person. I mean, everybody knows that, you wait till they're sober the next morning and say, I recognize that OCD made you so uncomfortable that you over imbibed, the night before. If it's an eating disorder thing, I noticed that food is making you really uncomfortable. Is that because of OCD, or are you struggling with something separate? You know, I really think it's a dialogue with that person that's not accusatory, but it's, you know, a seeking of information. Because then without that information, you don't really know how to address it. And you can't live in their brain. What I've learned in 20 some years of being in the OCD world is you can never guess what a OCD brain is thinking. You can never guess. So, you know, do your best fact finding with love and compassion, with that, you know, love sandwich. You know, I notice something's wrong, but I love you so much, and that's why I'm asking, but we got to address what's wrong. So at least that's my approach.
I don't feel like I have a lot to add to that specifically, but I really love what you said about just, it's easy, especially with our kids, I think, to say, you're having OCD, this is OCD, that's OCD, like, because we see it, we know. But it's so important to say what you said. I notice this is happening. Can you tell me more? Why do you think that's happening? And let them start coming to that conclusion themselves. Because sometimes it's so clear. We see it, but they have to see it in order to get better. It has to come from them.
There was a fabulous article that came out in Psychology Today by Michael Alsey, PhD, and it was talking about how people with OCD feel grinchy sometimes. You know, they feel bad about it. Like, am I being negative? Am I being awful because I didn't go out? You know, they feel bad about themselves. And he said that they really kind of need to embrace their inner Grinch. And I know we're running out of time, so I wanted to read what he said. If you have OCD this holiday, why not just allow some space for your inner Grinch to be there? Who said you have to be ever joyful and happy this holiday season? Who says you can't sometimes just feel antisocial, disinterested, or even downright mean? It doesn't make you a Grinch. It just makes you human. And don't we all? I mean, I just think you did a good job of saying that. And by the way, the Grinch inside was good, and his heart grew 2 sizes that day. You know.
Thanks for that, Kim.
Nobody that we love is their OCD. They've got that great big beating heart that we raised them to have, or that we've loved them through. And you know, sometimes they're just gonna have that inner Grinch, and you know, gotta let them have that space to be that.
This is true.
Yep. Bad days can't magically not become bad days just because it's the month of December or New Year's Eve. Right.
Exactly.
See that last quote, Chris, that last comment?
Yes.
That's funny. I agree with you. No, you're not alone, Liliana.
Yeah,
that's
it is.
I don't know how old your child is, but that's every kid. It's like,
yeah.
So, you know, you're just saying that because. Doesn't it sound like you're just saying that?
Yeah, and one thing, if your loved one is in therapy right now, you can try to pick some of that apart, figure out maybe what might be the thing that's bothering them most. If everything is, where do you start? And you know, start picking apart that way rather than saying, wow, we have all these issues and we got to tackle every single one of them, because it can feel like a mountain. So you tackle the hurdles first, and then you try to climb the walls, and then, you know, maybe the mountain gets smaller. But I really appreciate. Oh, sorry.
No. I was just gonna say, and you can also step back. Like, if it's not anything on the spectrum, if it's like severe, it's like, you know what, you got it. You're right. Right? It's like concede for one, right? It's like really choosing your battles, because like we got so many battles to fight that if this one isn't blowing up the house, I won't. I'm not saying that the child is right. I'm just okay, and just back off and go make dinner or go drink your tea or something like that. Like, I don't have to win this one. It's fine. Like, just concede sometimes. Just save your energy.
Yeah,
Sorry,
Yeah, non-engagement, something. Actually, speaking of last thoughts, as we wrap up this this hour, I just thought I'd go around very quickly, and everybody, if you want to share either where people can find you on the web or on socials, share where where they might be able to follow up with you or just learn more about what you're doing off this live stream. So, Shirsi, you want to share that first?
Yeah, sure. I'm on Instagram. My handle is that it? My handle is at KJ OCD Recovery. So I share a lot of my story and a little bit of my son's recovery as well on there.
And our website is jackmha.org, and our handles are jackmha.
And you can find me on social media, Aiden Behavioral Health and Consulting. But my website is www.drdarlenemdavis.com. You can find all my stuff there.
Excellent. And if you want to check out OCD Kids Movie, it's ocdkidsmovie.com. We're also OCD Kids Movie on Instagram, and have a lot of talks on YouTube that are kids focused called OCD Kids Speak Out. So you can find us there. And anyway, thank you all for joining our Supporting Families Navigating the Holidays with OCD with Hope talk tonight. If you know the online OCD conference, which happened a few weeks ago, the content is available for 60 days after the conference. So if you attended, it's not too late to experience OCD Con virtually. Just visit iocdf.org/online OCD Con, and you'll learn more there. You can also follow the IOCDF on a lot of the socials. You can hit the subscribe button on YouTube. You can follow on Facebook, Threads, as well as Instagram. OCD, I think even TikTok. The IOCDF is active on all the socials. This live stream is also one of many that the IOCDF runs. There's a fantastic live program, so you can see the entire schedule for the next few weeks and maybe even the future, next month or so, at iocdf.org/live streams. And you can also view recordings of past live streams, as well as watch the hosts answer pre-submitted questions at the IOCDF's YouTube channel, youtube.com/IOCDF. And of course, IOCDF stands for International OCD Foundation. And so you can remember to like and subscribe, follow, and you'll get notified when new videos are posted and new live streams come up. You can sign up for the IOCDF news and updates at iocdf.org/sign-up. iocdf.org/sign-up. And if you need any resources or looking to find a therapist, iocdf.org, great resources out there. So last but not least, thank you, Jack MHA, for the dedication and support, which makes this specific live stream possible. So Supporting Families wouldn't happen without us. So really appreciate Kim and the work that your foundation is doing to support families all over the world. So I'm Chris Bear, and we look forward to seeing you next month. Happy holidays, Happy New Year, and we will be back in January with more. And thank you to all my guests for their questions and answers, and thank you for asking and watching us. Have a great night.
Thank you. All right.